are talking HEX, aka the HEX, and this one is written and directed by Ryan Swart and stars Coco Lloyd as Diane. Now, essentially what this movie is about is this character Diane. She is given a mask by her mother as a kind of as a parting gift. They're a South African family, although the beginning of this movie starts off in London, and her mother goes back to South Africa and they do a video chat a little while later, and Diane sees her mother murdered on screen. So she goes back to South Africa to see her aunt, some old kind of like friends and things that were there, really to try and kind of recompense with what's kind of happened, and maybe to try and find out maybe what happened. And as she progresses, she finds that there may be, well, supernatural elements involved here, and a kind of a South African, well, HEX, as you can probably guess by the title, that may involve these kind of like masks, and her kind of artistic kind of talents as well maybe have something to do with it. What'll happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. So this is a low budget movie. I have to be honest with you, it's somewhat of a kind of a generic horror movie, but let's talk about what works first of all. I think this movie, you know, if you like jump scares, you'll like this movie, because boy does this movie have a lot of them. And I don't mind jump scares as much as some people, but you know, in a kind of a reasonable amount, but nonetheless there is a lot here, and I think some of them do work. There are a couple of sequences here that I do think look quite creepy. Now the movie tries to throw a lot at us when it comes to the kind of the supernatural stuff. It really doesn't kind of come in more into the kind of the second half of the movie, but when it does, it's pretty frequent. And I think some of the kind of the sequences for a low budget movie, that what this clearly is, does look kind of quite effective at times. At least a few of them do. I think as well, having this kind of movie tied in with South African kind of folklore, black magic, that kind of stuff, makes it for an interesting kind of little spin on these kind of supernatural elements that they have here. The witch doctor scene, I think, is very well handled, and that sort of character looks pretty kind of like freaky, I have to be honest with you, and that, to be honest, that's probably one of the best scenes in the kind of the movie itself. The movie has quite a large cast, maybe kind of somewhat too large, you could argue, because we have these kind of peripheral characters that, I have to be honest, sometimes you forget about, but nonetheless there are some kind of like fun smaller parts as well. I think the real problem with this movie is it's just very run-of-the-mill in regards to, you've seen this style of horror movie many times before, and the movie just isn't very sophisticated. So it really does fall into those tired old cliches and kind of sequences that you've seen before in so many films. And you know, having been done this channel for a number of years now and watched a lot of horror films, you know, you really do start to see the patterns in these things, and how kind of like these very kind of like cliched moments just seem to repeat themselves. So let me give you an example of just some of the kind of like the things that I wish filmmakers would maybe think a little bit more about. So we have sequences where our main character, Diane, experiences supernatural phenomena. Now the main kind of most overt one is there's like a box of personal effects from her mother, and literally a hand comes out of it and kind of grabs her arm. Now that is obviously, if you were to see and experience that is some clearly paranormal stuff, but it literally isn't mentioned the next day when she sees other characters. It's ridiculous. I mean, you would just get out of Dodge if that were to happen. And there's a number of instances very much like that, where not just her, but other characters will experience paranormal things and kind of just shrug it off and go, oh, I must have been hallucinating, and things like this. And it's just like this type of unsophisticated storytelling has just been done to death. And I do think that, you know, audiences nowadays want something a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more kind of realistic, and not the standard tropes that we've seen over and over again. And it's obviously the story just wants to go in a certain direction, and kind of reality be damned. I have to be honest with you, I think the acting is quite weak from a lot of the cast here, and sadly including our main character, Coco Lloyd, who really seems to struggle with any type of emotional scenes, obviously, with the kind of the death of their mother and things like that. There are a couple of smaller characters who I think do a better job, but the acting, unfortunately, is a little bit kind of hard to watch sometimes. And then just the logic in the story as well. You know, people seem to be getting killed and no one kind of seems to notice. You know, you're thinking, you know, where, for example, we see a body of one of the kind of the maids in this kind of toilet, and then it's never mentioned again. It's just like, well, what happened to that body? Surely someone's gone in there, things like this. And it just got, oh, look, that'll be a creepy idea. Let's just do that. And again, we get to our kind of our second half of the kind of the supernatural stuff ramps up. And it's just, you know, it's the girl with the kind of like the long wet hair. You know, we have like a contortionist guy. It's all sort of stuff you've seen before. And like I said, some of it I think works in a bubble. I think some of it is effective in a scene. But in the movie itself, it doesn't really kind of ever build up tension. It just has, look, there's a monster, there's a jump scare. Various kind of things. And to me, the movie as a whole just becomes a generic film with some kind of like some poor elements as well. I wouldn't say, I mean, the movie is, you know, it's not a jumbled mess in regards to its story. I think it knows the story it wants to tell. I just think it's not a particularly well-crafted film. And there are a couple of elements that I think relatively effective. So I won't go as far as to say this is a bad film. I just think it's a slightly below average film, to be honest. It's just not all that interesting. And it's just stuff you've seen before, but done better. But it's by no means like, you know, I must sound like a bit hard on this movie, but I just think it's, you know, it's just below acceptable, I think. Just kind of like, yes, you won't hate yourself if you watch this, but I really don't think you'll never want to watch it again. And you'll think, no, that's, you know, I've seen that film 20 times already in various other media. So I will give it a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.